Welcome to today's explainer. You know, if you've got boxes of family photos, faded negatives, or maybe delicate vintage albums just waiting to be preserved, you are in exactly the right place. Today we're diving into an amazing guide on preserving your family heritage and discovering how to unlock history using modern digital cameras, turning those physical memories into brilliant, everlasting digital archives.
Here's our game plan for today. We'll start with the camera scanning revolution. Move into structuring your digital archive, then digitizing prints and film. After that, we'll cover preserving vintage photo albums, artworks, and large prints. And finally, mastering mirrored wet plates.
To really get why this matters, let's talk about Olivia from our sources. She had this old shoebox full of faded, sepia-toned photos. One was just a mysterious, blurry picture of a stern guy in a uniform. Trying to snap a picture of it with a smartphone? Yeah, that did absolutely nothing. But when she used a mirrorless camera with a macro lens, shot it in RAW format, and did some basic post-processing, it was like magic. The camera pulled out a tiny, faint scar right above his eyebrow, and even a specific regimental crest on the uniform. Those hidden pixels actually let her identify him as Thomas McGregor of the 78th Highlanders, her great-great-uncle.
That story just perfectly nails this quote from archiving expert Peter Krog. He says, "You'll pick up 1,000 tiny details that you wouldn't be able to describe, but are really easy to see." And it's so true. When you digitize at high resolution with a real camera, you aren't just taking a picture of a picture. You're unearthing all these tiny details. It is literally awe-inspiring and bringing the people and events of the past vividly back to life. The emotional and historical stakes here, they're absolutely massive.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the camera scanning revolution. So it turns out traditional flatbed scanners are, well, notoriously slow and size-limited. But here's the crazy part. The direct light from a flatbed scanner can actually destroy a fragile silver daguerreotype, literally turn it into a blown-out, unviewable mess. Yikes. But a mirrorless camera, mounted on a copy stand, it completely outpaces the scanner. It gives you this incredibly fast, real-time tethered workflow right to your computer, and it safely handles literally any size or texture without physically damaging the original media.
Moving right along to Section 2, structuring your digital archive.
Listen, before we even touch a camera, we absolutely need structure to avoid ending up with a messy digital shoebox. Manually culling, picking out the best photos and tossing the blurry ones, is exhausting. But get this, there are free, offline AI tools that do all the heavy lifting for you, and they keep your family's data totally private. You can use open source software like Digicam to automatically group visually similar bursts of photos together. Then you can run them through tools like Upscale, which actually scores the faces for sharpness to instantly pick the single clearest image. You can literally shrink thousands of files down to your top 10 in minutes. It's so incredibly clever.
Now, this next tip is a total game changer. Even if it sounds a bit counterintuitive, you should actually never name your files based on what's in the photo. So skip the grandma at the beach file name. Why? Because you will never be able to find the physical original ever again. Instead, you've got to use a location-based naming system, kind of like the KFA A7 string right here. That tells you exactly which box, which roll, and which image number it is. This kind of logical hierarchy turns a mess of scattered files into a permanent, searchable database. You just add the visual descriptions later right into the file's metadata.
All right, let's step it up a notch. Section 3, digitizing prints and film.
So capturing film definitely requires some specific, really cool gear. You'll need a film holder to block out the room light, a diffused LED panel right beneath it, and a 1:1 macro lens. Now, color negatives are notoriously tricky because of that weird orange cast they have, but amazingly, software like FilmLab Desktop can invert that instantly. The real secret here to getting the ultimate digital master, you've got to shoot in RAW mode and make sure the flat, matte emulsion side of the film is facing directly at your camera lens. That is exactly where the true focus plane lives.
When it comes to standard paper prints, the setup is slightly different. The main goal is just perfect flatness and perfectly even lighting. You're going to use a copy stand pointing straight down and strip magnets to pin the print completely flat. Next, place 2 diffused LED lights at 45-degree angles to knock out any shadows. And honestly, the most important step? Just move your camera close enough so the print fills your entire viewfinder. That's how you maximize all that gorgeous resolution on your camera sensor.
Next up, Section 4, preserving vintage photo albums.
Now, what's really interesting here is that when you're dealing with vintage albums, the way they're put together is actually a huge part of the history itself.
Archivists use FFP for front-facing pages and RFP for rear-facing pages. Capturing the page layout, those little handwritten annotations, and the exact sequence, that matters just as much as the individual photos. Think about it, the creator of the album was telling a story with how they arranged everything, and we want to preserve that entire narrative context.
So the recommended workflow goes exactly like this. First, photograph the physical label you assign to the album. Second, get in there and photograph any handwritten notes or dates. Third, capture the entire full-page layout as one single image. And only after doing all of that do you carefully digitize any loose or removable photos individually. Doing it in this exact order guarantees the original physical context is backed up forever, way before you start zooming in on the little details.
Moving on to Section 5, Artworks and Large Prints.
For those really massive items that completely defeat the physical boundaries of a normal scanner, you're going to need to step up your gear. First, a 1:1 macro lens gives you zero optical distortion, which keeps the artwork perfectly square. Then, a tethering cable connects your camera straight to your computer, so you can actually check the focus on a large screen in real time. But guys, the magic ingredient here is cross-polarization. By putting polarizing film on your lights and a polarizing filter on your lens, it magically eliminates all that distracting glare bouncing off varnished paintings or glossy prints. It literally reveals hidden textures you couldn't even see with the naked eye.
Also, for those super oversized media, you want to look for a modern camera feature called pixel shift technology. This is wild. It's where the camera takes multiple rapid exposures, shifting the sensor by just a single pixel each time, and then combines them all into one staggering file, sometimes upwards of 150 megapixels. It captures every single brushstroke and fiber with true museum-level precision. It's honestly breathtaking.
And finally, we hit Section 6, Mastering Mirrored Wet Plates.
We have finally arrived at the true boss battle of the explainer. I'm talking about those beautiful, incredibly tricky 19th century cased images known as wet plates. So ponder this fascinating physics problem for a second. How exactly do you take a photograph of a highly reflective mirror without capturing the reflection of your own camera lens hovering right above it? This is the extreme difficulty of digitizing highly reflective Victorian media.
Before we solve that puzzle, we actually need to identify the media. A daguerreotype is a silver-plated copper sheet. It's literally a mirror with a memory. You have to physically tilt it just to see the positive image. If the image is on a darker, magnetic iron sheet, you've got a tintype. And if it has a bit of depth and it's on glass, well, that's an ambrotype. You absolutely must know what you're holding, because as we learned earlier, fragile daguerreotypes cannot ever be put in a flatbed scanner. Though, fun fact, those sturdier iron tintypes actually scan quite well.
So, to tackle that highly reflective daguerreotype, the sources introduced the black tent method. It is such a cool, clever DIY solution. Step 1. The camera and the plate have to be perfectly square and parallel. Step 2. You literally build a black tent around the plate using black foam core, cutting just a tiny hole for your lens to peek through. This black tent ensures that the mirror-like silver plate only reflects deep blackness back up at the camera, which completely hides your equipment. And finally, step 3. Because the plate is under glass, you just use your camera screen's live view to focus manually.
Okay, but wait a minute. If it's sitting inside a pitch-black tent, how on earth do we see the picture? We use steep, raking light. You position your lights outside the black tent at a very low 10 to 20 degree angle, shining through a white diffusion panel on the side. This steep, raking light is the absolute sweet spot. It bounces the light across that silver surface just enough to reveal the positive image, while the camera, safely hidden in the darkness above, captures the portrait completely free of any glare.
And hey, if you happen to be digitizing an ambrotype, remember that's the one on glass, here is a fascinating trick archivists absolutely love. Ambrotypes only look like positive images because they were historically backed with black velvet. But over the centuries, that backing surprisingly often just rots away. By simply placing a fresh piece of black, acid-free cardstock directly behind the glass, you instantly reactivate the contrast. The portrait just beautifully pops right back to life for your camera lens. It's incredible.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to remember this. We aren't just talking about technical camera settings today. We're talking about becoming the active guardian of your own history. Your family's legacy, those faces, those hidden crests and faint scars we talked about, they are not meant to fade into obscurity. Armed with a modern digital camera, you have the incredible power to bring them safely into the digital age. So my question to you is, which box of memories will you unlock first?